Hey, WBSE and Whiskey Network fans, I'm Chad Cadden. Joining me tonight is co-owner Bill Varnell and our boy Mark Pruett, the celebrity writer. He writes for us at the Whiskey Network magazine. If you haven't subscribed, please do, whiskeynetwork.net. We appreciate your support. Welcome to the sixth Roundtable Series event with Greg Schwartz, director of the film The Water of Life. We also have with us producer and partner Trevor Jones, Brad Kenyon, director of photography, and drone pilot and producer Alphonse Polina. Tonight we're going to talk about what went into directing and producing this film, The Water of Life. So we welcome our guests and we welcome the WBSE members. Make sure you post your questions in the comment section and we'll try to get to it. So let's get to the event and raise a glass. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Okay, before we get into tonight's discussion, Greg's going to treat us to his favorite clip from the film. This is just setting the stage for tonight's roundtable. Greg?
All right, let's do this. Here we go.
Dun, 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 dun.
My God, it's working.
A good friend of mine who works in the whiskey industry once said, when you buy a bottle of whiskey, you buy a hell of a lot more than liquor in a bottle. You're buying tradition, you're buying craft, you're buying history, you're buying flavor. It's impossible to replace that. And so that brings so much more culture to how you make the stuff and how you should appreciate it. This is why I love Scotch whiskey above any other drink. The blood of one small nation, absolutely.
Okay, Mark?
All right, Greg, thank you for that clip.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, no, that was excellent. That's one of my favorite parts. And that Highland toast, if that doesn't stir you, I don't know what to tell you. Is that why that's your favorite clip?
No, if I'm honest, I picked that because it's actually have a very funny story about it, about me and Brad. That was one of the very first things that we shot was the Highland Toast that day. And we didn't know Jim. We didn't know anyone. We had just gotten to Isla. And they was part of Jim's, did a thing called the kinship tastings. And they were very, very premium tastings, like 6 very expensive, very rare, very old whiskeys. And they let us film there. And they gave Brad and I each a setting like for free, and there were probably $200 or $300 a person. And Brad said to me, could I hand him some piece of gear? I think it was a Flex Fill, which is a big flexible card. And as I handed it across the table, the strap from it wiped all 6 of my whiskeys right off the table. Just broke the glass, spilled the whiskey, prompting the entire room to fall silent. But up till it hadn't begun yet, And so that was our that was our entry into the film in the first shoot day.
Did you get thrown out?
No. They Paul from Ardnahoe replaced them all for me, and then took me aside afterwards and said, "You owe me 500 pounds."
I'm just glad he didn't hit my glasses.
That's true. I did wipe my own out. So,
is there a warrant out for your arrest in another country? Is that what we're looking at here?
No, but honestly, you should have heard some of the gasps in the room. Like there wouldn't have been more gasps if I dropped a baby.
Oh my God, no!
Not the baby. Before we jump into all the other questions, I understand that there's a little bit of news that would be interesting to share with the viewers that are watching. Greg, what can you tell us about the potential for the film to be airing on PBS?
Yeah. Trevor, you want to tell people?
We are sure. Thanks for that, Greg. Yeah, we've just been approved by to be on PBS. So we're putting our materials together to do that, and we're very excited about it. We're very excited to be able to potentially be available all over the country, and I think PBS is a fantastic place for the film to be screened. And stay tuned. We will, of course, if you haven't seen the film, we will of course broadcast loudly once we start having air dates pop up.
Well, congratulations on
yeah,
that.
congratulations.
Round of applause, fellas.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Please keep us posted so we can post the details so the members can go and follow along with that. So thank you. I wanted to make sure that we got to that special announcement.
Yeah, we'll do.
We could do kind of a round robin because we have you all here, or we can definitely get different perspectives. And I have some questions that I'd love to take you through. So I may direct them at certain folks, and you can deflect or you can take it as you see fit. I think that this is an interesting question for Greg, but if you want to toss this to someone else, you can definitely do so. How did you decide on the topic of Scotch? How did ultimately this come into focus for you?
Well, the initial idea was just whiskey in general, but it started in Scotland when I was there with my wife, and I came back. Brad was very into whiskey already, and I came back from Scotland with a bunch of bottles of whiskey and a bunch of ideas in my head. And then I first sat down with Trevor, and he and I said, look, I think I want to make a movie about whiskey. I want to do something like the Chef's Table has done for cuisine and really focus on the making of it. And that we kind of left it at that, and he was into it. And then I don't remember why. Oh no, it's Christmas time. And I went back east to Pennsylvania, where I'm from and where Brad lives. And then I went to Brad's, and we did the same. We drank whiskey and talked. And over the course of that evening, it became apparent that whiskey in general was just too broad a topic to make a 90-minute film. It was just, we would have wound up not doing a good job of telling the story of any type of whiskey. Instead of telling them all, we would have just done a half-assed job of each. And so we were like, well, we've got to kind of break it down. And we decided, okay, well, let's start at the beginning, and we'll start with Scotch. I mean, unless you remember that differently than I do, but there was a lot of whiskey.
No, it was all really, we knew that we wanted to align this project with what we were really passionate about. Plus, at the time, we really knew, I think, and felt, as most of you probably felt during that time period, that we're in a kind of a golden age for whiskey. So it became a little bit of a no-brainer in the sense that we knew that the story we were going to tell was not certain things, right? It was not going to be a travel log going to how to go to Scotland, but it was also not going to be a primer for people. It was going to be people, we knew that the people that were into whiskey were at a level to just sort of absorb information and stories and things like that. So we knew that we kind of had an audience out there. So the next step was to try to get it funded, and we all did the uncomfortable thing and went online and put ourselves out there to try to get it crowdfunded and to greenlight it. And really, a lot of credit goes to Greg, Trevor, and Alphonse on that front. I mean, they did a lot of the heavy lifting on daily posts over and over to try to get that type of to get the project greenlit.
Nice. So I think I've heard Greg talk about this before, that there's potential where you could do a bunch of additional films about a bunch of different spirits. Is that right? Depending on what's in the cards, or potentially a financing partner, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing right now is, we have the ideas. We actually have some of the stories lined up. We have a really compelling, really exciting story about mezcal, kind of, that we're really in love with. And then, people probably know we're well on our way to being done with making a film about independent bottling. And we want to go and do other spirits as well. I would love, Bill, you and I have spoken about it. I would love to tell a story about bourbon. I just haven't found the story yet, the way in, it's not just a top level primer on the whole thing. But yeah, we're also, we're looking right now for sort of a long-term partner that would sort of, help us with the financing side of that, so that we're not spending half our lives raising money for one film after another, and really able to focus on telling those stories. And we think that there's a huge market for it. We've kind of proven that over the last year, and it certainly wasn't our plan at the beginning, but it's where we are now.
Well, with the news of you going to PBS and with the success that you've had with our members, I think you've absolutely proven it. So if there's a member out there, or if someone in the Whiskey Network happens to have a little bit of discretionary income or is an investor, absolutely. Let's see if we can make that connection. I'd like to jump, before we go too far down the rabbit hole of that, I'd like to jump to another question. I'm interested in maybe Brad and the Fonz's perspective on this question is...
Drink, everybody drink.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right. Mark made up the Water of Life drinking game.
Yes. Just make sure that I don't say the name of the person that causes the double thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take to make the film from end to end? Not how many years did it take off of your life, Alphonse? How long? about how long did it take to make?
I think it extended my life. Honestly, sure. Absolutely. I think
Good answer.
He's looking for a
That's
raise.
just because you've been well preserved, Alphonse.
Right, exactly.
And plus, we've all just sucked life out of Trevor, and now we're enjoying that.
Well, I know I was over there for 7 weeks, but they spent another, but not consecutively. So there was like 2-week intervals where we did scouting and then principal photography, and then just in the sense of the actual production, right? The gathering of content to make the story, as opposed to the getting the storyline down, pre-production, and getting the money and everything else that needs to go along with it, and all the logistics behind that. But then the crew went to Australia for, I don't know, were you guys down there for what, 10 days?
I think only 8 days. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we flew back from Ireland to interview Mark Renier, back to LA, spent 2 days in LA, then went on to Australia. It was crazy.
It felt like 10 days. We didn't have any walls.
Yeah.
Trevor, does that line up with the expense reports that you got?
There's nothing that could line up with the expense reports, Mark. Nothing.
We started shooting in May of 2018. The very, very first shot, the Jim's Highland Toast. That was May, the last day of May 30th, 2018, and the last stuff we ever shot. I don't know, early 2019.
Hashtag still shooting.
Yeah, hashtag.
Your conversation started late 17. And the campaign and the online stuff and everything that Brad mentions, as far as the crowdfunding, we started that in February of 18, and we were already in production before we actually shot anything.
And when we had our first big event for Burns Night of 2020, we were editing days before that event went live. So. Three-ish probably years all in, maybe more, to put the whole thing together from concept to delivery. And to be frank, and Greg will tell you, I'm the least excited about this, but we're still really in the process of making this film. We're working on extended cut. There's a lot of process that still goes into all of the stuff that we're doing. And frankly, the film itself is only a part of the product. Really, the sweet part of the product, the finish, the breaking open the cask and pouring it into a glass is all part of the making of it. Us all being here all together and sharing drams and talking about the experience and talking about this film, it's all part of the product itself, I think.
So let me throw something in here, Mark. Because Greg and I spoke about this the other day, about using or extending the film, and I believe you mentioned that was going to be part of the process of going onto PBS with an extended version of it, or is that not the case? So what are you planning on doing with the extended film and adding the clips that had previously been cut out?
We added about 10 minutes back to the film. It's 10 and change, and That's not for PBS. The PBS, their approval was of the standard cut. If anything,
Okay.
PBS might ask us to trim a bit. But this is an extended cut that we will wind up just selling online as a sort of a director's cut of the film. I won't call it a director's cut because our editor actually had as much as I did to do with it. And I don't feel it would be right to just kind of claim it as my cut, because I kind of dumped 8 scenes on him and we kind of worked about where to fit 6 of them in, and 2 of them never did get in, So, and they were scenes he had cut and then removed and then put back in. And I just, an hour before this call today, I was on the phone with him. He's exporting it right now to our scoring composer, who's adding score to those extra scenes. So that's happening literally today as we speak.
Still shooting.
So it's still living and breathing as a entity, as a thing, and that actually brings up a great question, and I'm really interested to hear all of your perspectives on this. In that, so you have this thing, right? You create this film, you put this thing out there, and you release it to the world. And when you're an artist, and when this happens, that's kind of the scary moment. That's a little bit of the tipping point. What have you learned about the whiskey community following the release of the film and everything that's ensued from that?
That our instincts were right. That's the big thing. I mean, we knew if we made a film that we would like as whiskey guys, that people would like it. And, they have been incredibly kind to us and supportive of us, unbelievably so. And the crowdfunding thing wound up paying a dividend we didn't see up front, which was we built an audience who knew about us before we made the film, and they were waiting for it. And that was awesome. So that has really, really kind of come home to roost in a way that is incredibly moving, honestly, to me. And I think to all of us.
Anyone else? Come on, Alphonse. Alphonse, I know the community has been very good to you, Alphonse. Come on.
He's become he's become like the kind of character in a sitcom that when he appears on stage, they have to pause because everyone claps in the audience, like Kramer. He's like the Fonz. Well, actually, the Fonz in Happy Days used to have to do that whenever he would appear.
Frank.
Everybody take a drink.
Oh, I said it twice.
Yeah. No, that's and you're projecting that. That's not the case. But thank you.
Oh, I think it is. Look, I mean, I know we all have, but
yeah.
I personally have seen this whole thing take on its own life with, just as an example, the Big Man We Dram that you do every week and all the other interviews and podcasts, etc. It has taken on a whole different perspective aside from the film, at least from my point of view.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing that has proven to me that my dad was right when I was a kid, and he would always say, there's never enough room for me to run out of things to talk about. I'll talk forever because I've done so many podcasts, and I still look forward to it. I get excited and enjoy it. And, we're going to start doing some more, I think, in Asia now as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, from this perspective, from the side of the community, it has definitely been very interesting to see the community kind of come together and rally around the film in a lot of different places. It's not just our community; it is in a lot of other communities. But I will tell you, and I'm not blowing smoke. I'm being very truthful. I don't think I've ever seen a negative comment. I mean, I've seen other films talked about, and maybe there's been some comparisons done, and people have opinions about those. But I've never seen a negative opinion of this film. It's just. It taps into the whiskey geekery that's going on, and you get into that perfectly. You breathe such life into that aspect of the film.
It really shows the whiskey culture very well.
Well, thank you.
We paid them very well, so they wouldn't.
There's a human element. I think that the storyline, we sometimes call it a love letter to whiskey, but basically the whole struggle and things that people were going through, I think will identify with people that really aren't into the whiskey world as well. And in a sense that there's a story there and it keeps going. So it's not less necessarily a documentary about whiskey. It's a movie that you can sit and watch and see people's attempts, their struggles, the passing of the gauntlet of generations, and just it's a human story. And I think that that's the thing that I'm proud of from the storytelling aspect of it.
Well, I think you guys captured the essence of Scotland with this film, because and just from my perspective where I live, there's a little town nearby that a lot of people don't like because it's a paper mill and it produces a smell. But after I watched your film, I realized that there's a lot of companies that are built in an area, and then the towns are built around them because they provide the employment for that town, for those people. And that was really the essence of the story of Bruichladdich. Is it was the town was built around Bruichladdich, and then Bruichladdich went, and then it was revitalized and brought the community back together. So it's more than just a story about whiskey. It's a story about life and how Scotland survives and how these distilleries have brought the towns back to life.
And
Well,
just for the record, I live just south of that paper mill. I'd much rather live next to Bruichladdich.
Yeah, I think whiskey's a lot more favored than paper, but
I know where that town is.
That's Spring Grove.
Yes.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
You know, maybe this is true in Kentucky. I don't know. I assume it's true anywhere they distill spirits, but the trees around the distillery turn black because there's a certain I want to say there's something in the air that comes out of a distillery that grows really well in wood, and the trees turn black around the distilleries.
it's the same stuff. It's that mold that grows on the outside of the
Brick houses.
itself.
Yeah.
Brick houses. Yeah.
And they told us that when they used to have all these illicit distillers all over Scotland, that's how they could identify if people were distilling in their houses or their barns. They'd look for black trees, and if the trees had turned black, they would know. And it doesn't kill the tree; it just turns it black. So it was like a dead giveaway. And they said that's why every distillery in Scotland is painted white, because that way they'd keep painting over when that mold would start to grow on the outside of the building.
Interesting.
Fun
Interesting.
fact.
So what has happened with the whiskey community in your future work? Do you think that this is going to serve well as a blueprint for, you go into mezcal, you go into bourbon? Is this blueprint going to serve you well?
I mean, I hope so.
Right.
I can't see that it doesn't. I mean, because part of the experience that we've had is, there's something about spirits people who care enough about spirits to care about what their product is and where it comes from, that those people tend to also be experimental. It's not the same thing. I feel like with my dad's generation, he was like, I'm a Marlboro guy and I'm a Coors Light guy, and that's just what I have, and that's the way it is. And like the whiskey community is very different. Everyone has their favorite, but you experiment and you try new things, and you talk about it. It becomes a point of conversation. Greg says, I prefer this, I prefer that. Let's get together and taste and try our different things. And I think that lends itself to different kinds of spirits too. I know tons of whiskey people that I've met that if I brought them over to my house and said, here's a couple of mezcals I think you'd really like, I can't imagine any of them would say, no, I'm just going to stick with whiskey. Everyone would be like, yeah, of course. Why not? Let's try it. Let's have a whole bunch of drams and let's just see what we like.
We see that in the group quite often.
Right. I think that kind of social component of it is why doing films like this is going to work for whatever the spirit is. I think like yourself, you guys are the perfect example. We said to you, we have a mezcal film we'd like you to check out. And by the way, here's a tasting sample kit of mezcals we think you'd like. No one's going to say no. Everyone's going to want to take that.
Sure.
That's part of what makes it so fun, the community.
They'll have their opinions after.
It's always better, though, to ask the opinion after a kit full of booze.
Yes. WBSE is very opinionated too.
Well, I'm such a whiskey nerd that literally while we've been talking, I'm just looking for an excuse. So I'm artificially generating one right now to mention to you guys, look at the color on this whiskey I'm drinking. It looks like I'm drinking water, right? I mean, I'm trying to get it to focus, but there you go. I mean, look at this. This is
that Kalila?
No, it is a Dalyuan. And I'm just blown away because people tend to like prefer darker whiskeys for some reason. And this is a Dalyuen from Signatory, an independent bottling. This is incredible. It's an ex-bourbon cask. It's an ex-bourbon hogshead. And it's only 12 years old. And I'm just completely blown away. But I love Dalyuen, by the way. And it's almost impossible to find a official bottling of it because Diageo owns it. It's one of the main ingredients of Johnny Walker Red. And yet no one even knows it. And anyway, sorry, I had to throw that in there because I'm just that much of a nerd.
That's all right. That's all right. Feel free to interject. Hopefully you go through a couple of different bottles like wardrobe changes throughout the show here.
Yeah.
Because you live in a state that will allow you to buy it.
I'm already on Dram 2. This was Dram 1.
Hey, but you get this in Pennsylvania now, so you're much luckier than you were, right?
So I'm going to go to Brad and Alphonse again because I'm interested in their perspective on this particular question. Did anything strike you as extraordinary when you were done filming this piece? Like, what sticks out in your mind as something really extraordinary?
Al?
Come on, Al. Something had to jump out at you.
Can I answer for them each? Literally, I'll give you an answer for each of them.
Okay, please do.
I'm not going to give this away because I know people who might see this haven't seen the film.
You have to do it in each one of their voices.
Oh, no.
With Brad, the second day of the shoot, the main shoot, we interviewed Adam Hannett. And at the end of that interview, Brad and I walked away together and we were like, okay, we got it. And I knew we had the first tent pole of the movie, which was Adam's not the main interview in the movie, but there's a heart and a soul and a sincerity to what he has to say that completely shapes the entire film. 6 months later, Alphonse and I went to Australia. And at the end of the interview we did with Jim McEwen in Australia, it was the same experience. When he talked about his mentor, I'm not going to give it away, but when he told us the story about his mentor and the tools, those to me were the two tentpole moments of the movie. And one was with Brad and one was with Alphonse. So there you go.
Jim was endlessly fascinated by the drones. Everybody drink. That was a word.
I have the list up now. Yeah.
Jim McEwen was one of the words too, right? So that's
that is double up.
Double up. He was endlessly fascinated with the drones, and I'll pay Alphonse a compliment here that he spoke at length about how much he appreciated what you did and how he was just absolutely fascinated by that.
He must have not been paying attention the moment I crashed it in the dunnage.
I didn't hear that story, so he didn't remember that. You're good.
Yeah, he's being kind because it was in front of him, and I'm joking.
So you've gotten this far. You've come this far with the film. You've got your toes over the edge, and this thing is going to go on PBS. And now you're kind of looking in the eye of perhaps continuing the legacy of the Water of Life, whatever that is, a whiskey film, a mezcal film, a bourbon film, so on and so forth. How did making this particular film change your perspective on life? There were a lot of very intriguing events, or there was a lot of emotion that came through on the screen. So I'm kind of curious to know what perspective did you gain from making this film?
I'll answer for myself, but maybe hopefully someone of these guys can answer too, because I'd like to hear what they have to say. But I'll tell you, to me, this film was 3 different roads that intersected for me personally in a way that felt really almost supernatural, which is I was an exchange student in Scotland, and I've been there loads of times, and I've always loved the place. I love whiskey, and I'm a filmmaker. And all of these things kind of lined up in a way that just, to this day, just makes the hair on my neck stand up. You know, it was like, this is my at bat. You know, this is this kind of the pitch I've been looking for.
Yeah, and this film is a time capsule. You know, when we first started this, Greg and I went into research mode. I have a book of all of the things that I watched online and things like that, just so I could take notes. But I watched just about any kind of documentary about Scotch whiskey, Islay, Scotland, that I could, knowing that now that this film that we made 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it has its place in this golden age of whiskey that we're somewhere around. But this film has a place in history, and I feel like that is something that is very real.
Anyone else?
Yeah, that's great.
I think for me, the thing that I think had the biggest impact on me was not the experience of making the film, but the experience of working with the distillers and the subjects in the film. There's a generosity of spirit, both physical and not, with the people that we worked with. The generosity of the people we worked with, particularly to each other, and these are all gigantic operations that they have bottom line that they're driven to. These are all businesses, but we never heard anyone say a bad word about any other business. That what we heard multiple times from multiple people was that there was enough customers for whiskey that they didn't need to compete with each other. There's enough for all of us. And they also all had this sort of opinion about that whatever your entry point for whiskey is, the product itself is so good that wherever you jump in, you'll end up spreading out and trying everyone. And that's it felt so unnatural, frankly, to see this kind of complete generosity. Really made me think a lot about, how competition works. It felt to me that in the industry itself, the competition is about making yourself better, not dominating your competitor. And I think that was powerful to see, particularly amongst, multi-billion-dollar businesses. I mean, in Isle alone, there's almost as many distilleries as there are people, but there's no competition. No one's trying to knock anyone else out of business or become the preeminent brand. Everyone's just trying to make their own thing better.
Jim McEwen said as much of that, where he basically said, hey, if you don't like my product, I know a guy over here, you should try his product. And that was fascinating to hear. I'm sorry, Bill, that I cut you off.
Oh, that's
no, I was saying something about what Trevor was saying, because it comes with a certain level of confidence that they're these marketing techniques, because it's sort of like their marketing technique now. A lot of the people that we're dealing with is all we need to do is have people try it. That's it, because it's good. It's good whiskey. We believe in it. There's obviously a story behind transparency and the people working here and things. I'm talking about Bruichladdich, but all we have to do is have people try it, and that's it. So
my favorite Jim McEwen story isn't even about Bruichladdich or Bowmore. My favorite Jim McEwen story is about Laphroaig.
Well, you can't leave us on that. Tell it.
Didn't he say somebody's name a couple times?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's two. Yeah, for sure.
You guys are up to like 8 already.
No, Jim always tells the story. At the night where I knocked over all those whiskeys, Jim told this story, and I've heard him tell it a bunch of times since, that he was in Miami and he was supposed to fly back to Scotland, and he had just done a tour of the US, and Miami was his last stop, and his flight got canceled because there was a hurricane coming in. So he stayed an extra night in the hotel he was in, which was on the 28th floor of this hotel in Miami. And he went down he was really, really upset because he wasn't going to get back home, and his daughters were still living at home. They were young at the time. And he went to the bar, and he said that they had Laphroaig behind the bar. And he asked them for like a quadruple pour of Laphroaig because he didn't want to stay in the bar. He took it up to his room, and he said he sat on his balcony of the 28th floor of this hotel in Miami and smoked a cigar and drank a quadruple Laphroaig and watched a hurricane blow in his t-shirt and his underwear. And he said he just sat there even when he was getting wet. He didn't even care. He said the cigar didn't work after the rain started, but the whiskey was still good.
Well, I know what I'm doing later.
Home.
I think of that every time I drink Laphroaig.
That's an odd thing to associate with, but okay, Greg, whatever works for you. This is a potentially divisive question, and I don't want us to go down the wrong road, but it is an interesting question to me. Now that you're this far into it, would you have done something differently in making the film?
Yeah. we would have, I mean, to be honest with you, we would have been smarter just in the way we made the film, because we were learning as we went in some ways. And I mean, not in any kind of, I'm not embarrassed about anything or regretful of anything. I just think there was an efficiency. Like when the reason Fonz and I went to Australia was because we wrote to Jim and said, we'd love to interview you. We're going to be in Ireland. We'd like to come across and do one more interview with you. And he wrote back and said, I'm happy to talk to you guys, but I'm in Australia for the next 6 weeks. I'm setting up a distillery here. So we realized that LA is about the same distance from Scotland as it is from Brisbane. So Fonz and I flew to Brisbane. You know, and I mean, that obviously was not an efficient move, but I'm super glad it happened. I mean, I'd never been to Australia before. I got to hang out. I got to basically live at a distillery in Australia for a week. I mean,
Trevor, was that the story you got with the expense report, or should we not go there? Or?
Yeah, I got a call on a Tuesday. I was like, hey, Greg, can you meet up for a couple minutes? He's like, oh, I can't right now. I'm at the grocery store. I was like, that sounds like a boomerang in the background. So tell me that you're not in Australia.
Sounds like a boomerang.
Didgeridoo.
Yeah. I got a question for Brad. Brad, was there a lot of footage to choose from, and did you have to make choices? Or was the production so compact and tight that you shot the footage that you exactly needed, or did some of it not end up making it into the film?
Well, I did not edit the film. And so, you know, my goal was to capture as much of the story as we went along in the process. And with any documentary, just like a war, you can only predict the first shot, right? And then everything else you have to kind of dodge and parry around the story and the way the story the story that it tells you which way to go. And that's why I really appreciated the regrouping process throughout this whole thing. We would watch dailies at the end of the day, while Alphonse was the one tasked with backing up all the footage, and while we were sitting there opening up the whiskeys of the day for the first time. But like, we would regroup every night and just make sure that we're recalibrated for what story we were telling, because we did capture a lot of distilleries stories, but it came through where we're just looking at each other and like, this Bruichladdich story, it's a lot. It's enough to really carry the film. But we didn't want to make it all about that. We wanted to make sure that we were getting all the touch points of the people that were gracious enough to, and they weren't political choices. They were, you know, we were so stoked to get these other stories all around Scotland to tell the story of Scotch whiskey in a certain time period of what these people did, where they were. So it was really lightning in a bottle as we were shooting it. And so the decisions of what to put in the film and what not to put in the film, Greg had struggled with and throughout the editing process, and involved everybody here just in the sense of, hey guys, you know, what do you think of this? What does this cut look like? What does this story look like? Because it's heartbreaking to take a story out of your main story, but we had so much, which is again going towards the future, to these other tertiary stories that we're talking about in the future. We're going to tackle these better prepared, but I think we were prepared, because you really I have no regrets about about the process, the organic nature of the story collection process that we went through. We went in as genuinely interested people. We started talking to people. We didn't just show up with a crew and say, you signed a form, we have your time, let's talk. We went around just to sort of introduce the story, make sure that these people were comfortable with us. We scouted with a camera. I remember going to Lefroy and I think it was his name, John Campbell.
John Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the middle of a huge
it was their festival day. It was their
open festival day for Fashil. And we were just like, hey, let's go and check it out. And we shook hands, and he's like, oh, you got a camera? Go, let's go. And we're like, okay, so we interviewed him and had a great interview that really didn't make the film, but it was an amazing interview because it really connected with me personally, with my experience with Lefroy. And he was so gracious, and it was a really good start to our experience with everybody that, we were interacting with. And it was just, again, an organic process of collecting stories.
Do you remember the story he told us about the payday case?
With what?
So John Campbell, who's the head distiller at Lefroy, the longest serving ever now, as of last year, is the head distiller at Lefroy. Lefroy, probably the most divisive whiskey in whiskey, said that when he worked there, every month when you get a paycheck, you get a case of whiskey. And for the first year and a half he worked there, he hated Lefroy because he was just a warehouseman. Yeah. He hated it, and so he'd just keep it. And then he eventually accumulated over a year and a half, like 18 cases of Lefroy. And he said to his wife, I don't know what I'm going to do with this stuff. But slowly he got promoted and he learned to love it. And, so now he said he still has this enormous collection of his old payday cases of Lefroy. I don't remember if it was a case or not, but it was bottles, multiple bottles,
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no.
Well, save it all for when eventually the DVD and the Blu-ray come out. You can add that as extra content.
There is one shot of that interview in the closing credits. John Campbell, in the closing credits of the movie, John Campbell says, you have to remember you're making whiskey for everyone else. You're not making it for yourself.
Interesting.
That's from that interview.
Anyone else have a perspective on that? Trevor, Fonz?
Well, we can't offer bottles of Lefroy with our film, but we can offer glasses.
I do need a glass. I've got to order that going on.
Well, just to throw a little teaser in here, we are going to be offering up for sale sometime real soon some bottles that support the film and give you an opportunity to see the film. And that's about all I'm going to say about that right now. We'll say more about that in the coming weeks.
What a tease.
Yeah, tune in next month. But, on an unrelated note, I will say, when you're asking Mark about how much footage we shot, we were halfway through the shoot and I got an email from from David Keir at Glenallachie, and said, I see you guys are in Scotland making a movie right now on social media. Would you like to come and talk with Billy Walker? I can get him for you for 4 hours, which Billy Walker's like, Howard Hughes. So we were like, yes. So we completely changed our schedule and moved things around. I mean, I always joke that we kind of screeched to a halt in the middle of the road and did a 180, but that wasn't that jarring. But we did go, and
didn't affect my schedule. You guys were going this way. I just went that way.
I got a private message, and it's a question. I don't know who it's from, but maybe it's more of a suggestion. The next time you do a film, can you rent ATVs for Fonz so that he can get from point A to point B without any trouble?
Trevor rented him a Suzuki.
Absolutely not.
He had
that had the same motor that was in the damn ATV. It was like this big.
The whole crew had 2 vans, one of which we rented and one of which one of our producers in Scotland owned. That was everybody else. And then Fonz had this little tiny Suzuki, and he would go off on his own. That's why he's the outdoor whiskey. He was sent adrift every day.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
Fonz riding a moped.
Wasn't it Brad who got stuck in the mud on one of those treks, or was that someone else, Greg?
I don't
know. I mean, Leslie Ann, our producer in Scotland, got stuck off the road and popped 2 tires.
I meant on one of the famous Jim McEwen. It's just around.
Oh no, that was Guy. That was our sound mixer. He broke through the bridge. Guy, who's just so you know, I probably
that was a foot, not a tire.
I'm probably twice Guy's size and weight, but he's the one who fell through the footbridge in the bog and got stuck in the mud. That was on the first day.
What it's worth, I don't know. We've covered this story before, but that story of that first hike was really like an amazing.
It was a trial by fire.
But it also set the tone for the entire rest of the film. And stop me, guys, if this story has already been told before. But Jim told us that on the first day of filming with Jim, we first got to Isla. We got up super early, packed up all our gear. We're very excited, and we're going to go on a short hike just off the path with Jim. just off the road.
100 meters. Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple 100 meters off the side of the road, which turned into like an 8-hour trek up like a 70-degree angle mountain that was getting wetter and boggier as we got closer to the top, defying all laws of physics. And as a side note, Brad and I had an argument at the beginning of the day because we had this slider. It was like 100 pounds that we had rented and brought with us all the way to Isla. And Brad was like, there's no reason we don't need it. And I was like, the hell, we're going to rent this piece of gear and not bring it with us. And he was like, all right, you carry it. I was like, yeah, I'll carry it. I'll do it. I thought it was only going to be 100 yards off the path. Anyway, 8 hours later, while I'm humping this enormous heavy piece of gear up the mountain. But at the end, and the whole time, like we didn't pack food because I had no expectation we were going to be up there so long. Jim was the only one who packed food. He packed a couple biscuits and a thing of tea. And we climbed to the end of this mountain, which ended up being this just mind-blowing cliff overlooking the ocean, where Jim sat and shared his tea with all of us and described to us how the whiskey he makes is born on the coast of Canada when it becomes a wave that travels across the ocean to crash on the shores of Isla. And it was incredible. It was incredible and awful. And and ended with this just incredible magical experience. Anyway, I always feel like that day, after that day, it was, there was nothing that we couldn't all do together as a team.
Hey, Brad, I think the story about that piece of equipment's been wanting to come out for a little while. So just a little bit of group therapy here.
Hey, do you guys mind if I share something that's a couple? I loaded. By the way, I've loaded up a ton of photos. Not a ton, 6 photos and videos of behind the scenes. But I can show you what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
if you want to see it.
bring that up. That up.
Give me 1 second here.
While you're doing that, just for the people keeping score at home, I actually did finish my first glass and I poured myself a Glenallachie 15. So cheers to Billy Walker and
Great
I'm
whiskey.
reloaded.
Can you guys, everyone see?
Yeah, we can see that.
That's
Hold
Brad.
on. One second. Fonz, did you have something?
No, I said you just finished 1 glass in this last 45 minutes. Yeah, continue.
Wow, calling me out.
I'm on my 3rd, but hey, so this is Brad's.
I now
products.
have 2 going.
And then this is another guy who worked on our crew, but then you can see the man in the middle there. But this is just a quick little video clip of that first day. So we were basically chasing Jim all over these hills in this wind and everything, and so
he's quite the hiker, right?
He really is.
Very much.
He's no joke, and he will happily tell you that he's got 2 artificial hips. And he put us all to shame, and all of us are 30 years younger or more than he is.
Jeez. Just as we're going through this, or unless you've got some more video clips, I just wanted to check in with Bill and Chad. Did you guys have any additional questions out of the conversation that we've had up to this point?
Yeah, I saw Fonz go grab a picture. I think he grabbed a picture of that moped he was riding. He wanted to show us.
Man, you got your eyes on you. No, it was a picture of of my little car.
Oh,
You know what? I didn't have a moped over there. It would have been a better world.
Yeah, it was a Suzuki car, and
it was a Suzuki car with like a less than a liter engine in it, but
it was like 3 cylinders. I'm gonna play. We can talk over it. There's no sound with this, but well, there is, but I'll mute it. But I'm gonna show you a video of Fonz at work while we're talking here, if that's all right.
Fonz, it would have been cool.
It's all right
to have
with
your
us. It's
motorcycle.
all right with Fonz.
what's that, Mark?
I said all of this equipment would have fit on your motorcycle, and you would have been able to go up a 70-degree angle with it.
Oh yeah.
You can see that. You can in my shot here. You can see the Suzuki in the corner. But
and the wind.
Yeah, the wind is crazy.
That's the reason he was taking this, because it was blowing at like 35 knots, and the drone was sideways, and he was blown away how level it looked in the iPad. Comparatively, and obviously he's cut the wind noise off because we couldn't barely hear each other.
So what is that in the background?
That is
At Bowmore.
Can you hear that?
Wow. Looks like the church in the back of Bowmore. isn't it?
No, it's
not Bowmore.
It's port side.
It's
not
Port Ellen. Port Ellen.
Port Ellen. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just off to the left are the docks where you were, Brad.
Yeah, yeah.
Frame, but yeah.
Um,
We're up there having lunch, having a little romantic lunch, looking at the water.
Getting the kid jumping into the water shot.
That was you. That was a great shot. That was the year before.
no, not the year before, 3 months before, but yeah.
Mm. You're right. Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't even have a chance to tell Bill and Chad ahead of time that I preloaded some of these shots. So
Well, that's quite all right.
this is how
Well,
I
all the shots you want.
You know what, Greg? You pop anything up there you want to, because you're going to have the opportunity to get a copy of this and keep this for posterity, because, hey, this is the whole team. Well, maybe not the whole team, but the major part of the team talking about how you put this film together.
Well, the piece of gear Trevor's talking about that he had to Trevor carried across a Scottish moor for a couple hours.
This is important. Take a picture.
I'm just going to play
please.
this video. That was basically
Yeah.
wound up being Alphonse's piece of gear, but here I'm going to play this while we talk. We don't have to stop talking, but there's no sound. But you see some of these shots of this castle. Is it playing? Actually,
No, it's not.
Not at all.
Chair.
Hold on. So
I was looking for a picture of that because I got a picture of the crew.
Hey,
yeah, here we go.
needed
Sorry
an
about that.
excuse to take a drink. We don't to just talking over the footage, because I think there's been.
I said
plenty
Fonz
of-
a couple times. Here you go.
Yes, you did. You said fun. Take a drink, everybody.
So if you see the film, there's a number of shots of this castle in the film. And this is the way we got some of these shots. Alphonse shot some amazing time lapses of this place. And this is our slider shooting motion control time lapses. And this is the thing Trevor carried across the Scottish moor, which, by the way, in Brad's defense, Brad was 100% right. We didn't use it, and it was a complete waste of time and energy.
Trevor,
I
I
love
hope that
these
was
shots,
muted.
though.
I hope you didn't hear that, Trevor.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't catch you.
Okay, never mind. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
You're
I
awesome.
love
Watch
these
it
shots.
later.
They're really, it just reminds me of like everything about these shots is just a total memory there. The little gate that you have to go through to get up to that castle and
Oh my
everything.
God.
It was such an experience. If you can go to Scotland, and I know this is not what the film is about, but if you can go to Scotland, man, just go. It's so beautiful.
Here's my last video shot I have of Brad shooting a cask being toasted in the Speyside cooperage.
That poor barrel. Why is it on fire?
Making beautiful whiskey for you.
I'd call that maybe a little bit of alligator char. Yeah.
A
I
little
will
bit.
say this too. So this is also off topic, but to Brad's point about how great Scotland is, you can taste at liquor stores,
Yes, right.
which is also amazing. You can just walk in any liquor store and say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I want that one." And they're like, "Oh, have a taste, hurt. See if you like it."
want me to take that bottle.
Yeah.
Wow.
The journey begins at duty free.
That would.
What do you got there, G?
No, this is what I mentioned at the beginning, guys. This is Ardnamurchan, one of the newest whiskeys in Scotland. This is the first time I've ever tasted it while we've been talking. This is mind-blowing whiskey. Amazing whiskey. A little bit like a Ben Romick, like a real kind of big Highland whiskey. Not peated at all. Just really incredible.
Are
Until
you?
we taste it, we don't believe you.
Are you above a chug? I mean, come on.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I've been drinking it for a little while. The cool thing, Ardnamurchan is the greenest distillery in Scotland, and it's this was actually quite affordable. I think this was like $50.
Nice.
Now, mind you, it's a pretty young whiskey. Although it's not that young. I mean, it's like 5 years old, I think. Yeah.
We
For the
could sit
record,
here.
I do chugging, by the way.
Hey, what do you
We
got
can
there,
sit here-
Mark? What do you got there, Bill?
This is the
Oh, you got the
Dunmore.
Waterford.
Oh, the Waterford. Nice.
I
Did
saw
you
you
supposed-
hold a bottle up earlier.
Yeah, well, Mark, it was a conversation that was leading towards Mark, and Greg was talking about the color of the whiskey and being so pale. So I grabbed I've got a bottle of organic here to drink, to enjoy, and I poured some up to see what it was
Well,
like.
it's kind of hard for me to get this focused in, but
And you got it back there, but yeah,
there you go. Nice
Got some
color.
nice color to it.
yeah, that's the Dunmore.
That's the Dunmore.
Did you guys see the whiskey they released like 2 days ago at Waterford, the biodynamic whiskey?
Yes.
I did
Was that the
see
cuvee,
a
or-
release on that. Yeah.
No, they did a cuvee too with that. That was with the Facebook group, but they also are releasing their first it's called Luna. And
Yes.
and yeah, it's looks pretty interesting. I mean, we knew about it because if you remember, Trevor's actually made fun of me for this. One of the farmers that grows the biodynamic barley for them in Ireland is named John McDonald, which is my father-in-law's name. And I point that out all the time. And I'm always disappointed that no one seems as excited, including my father-in-law, by that as I am. And Trevor once said to me, maybe you should be a little less impressed that there's a farmer in Ireland named John McDonald. Maybe this isn't that rare.
Well, this just proves that old McDonald had a farm.
Yeah.
I couldn't let
You
that
said
go.
the bottle's
Bill
called Luna?
Hatch.
Tip your waiters.
But I haven't tasted the
Enjoy
biodynamic.
the meal.
Yes, Chad, you'll have to get a bottle of that.
I will
Yeah.
have to get a bottle for
Absolutely.
Lady Luna.
Yes. The official
my
Coke
English
dog of
bulldog.
Luna.
The only thing that when you grow biodynamic, the only thing you can use as fertilizer is ground up steer horns.
Nice.
And so that's how
There's lots of that.
and it's not a single farm distillate because they had to get 3 different farmers to grow it to make enough. So that's why it's
Wow.
not it's a single malt. It's just not a single farm.
That's an interesting concept because wouldn't that mostly be calcium?
I would think, yeah, for sure. But who knows? I've never ground up a cow horn before.
No.
Isn't I thought cow horns there's a lot of collagen in them.
Collagen, calcium, like fingernails and bone. I don't know.
And this is what whiskey has done to everybody.
Yes. Look at us.
We know everything.
We have fallen down as hosts and we've scrolled down the rabbit hole. So to
But
bring
what
us
does
back,
calcium smell like?
If you would have jumped back in time 30 years and said to say, Chad, you're going to be having a conversation about ground up cow horn, you would
In
not have
relation to
believed the
whiskey.
person that said it.
30 years ago, I probably would have believed that too.
well, Chad would probably want to do something else with it, but that's a
Yeah,
different story.
chug from it.
We could talk about this movie all night long, and there's a couple of other things that I want to get to. So just to put at least a temporary cap on this, Chad, Bill, or any of you folks, how would you like to leave The Water of Life, a whiskey film, with our group in discussing it? Any final comments? Let's start with Chad and Bill.
Bill?
I think this is a phenomenal film, and one thing that really struck me, and I believe this was when you were screening over in Lancaster, I heard one of the ladies say that film brought me to tears. It was that emotional, and it is the epitome of the downfall of the Scotch industry and the rebirth of the Scotch industry. You guys captured it perfectly with the film, and it's just a phenomenal film that I think everybody that likes whiskey or likes spirits even should see. Chad?
So for me personally, I've watched a lot of movies, films on whiskey because it's a passion of mine. A lot of people a couple years ago was talking about the film Neat, about bourbon. Great movie. It just highlighted so many different things. And I think you get the same essence in your film, The Water of Life. And it brings emotion, it brings joy, it brings intrigue. It just captures every essence that a film should really do, should capture. And I highly recommend people to see it if they haven't. I know we have a link somewhere in WBSE and also at the Whiskey Network. But for people who are Scotch curious, like me, it really opened my eyes a little bit more to the inside of Scotch and the passions that these people resonate making this product for the world. And I think you guys hit a grand slam with the film. And I've raised my glass to you all, and I look forward to your future products because I'm sure I'm going to be a believer in that. So cheers to you guys.
Cheers. Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
Conchim.
So just as a preview for the audience, something to look forward to, the next issue of the Whiskey Network magazine is going to be coming out here in the next couple of days, launching on October 1st. And you're going to hear it first for everyone who's tuning in. Greg Swartz is my interview for the month. So I'm pretty excited to unveil that. It's going to be cool.
I hope so.
I painted you in a very negative light, Greg. There were just a lot of ugly things that came out.
I did what I could to protect you, man, but that Pruett guy, he's tough. He's a tough reporter.
I just kept badgering Fonz because
He called me like every 10 minutes. He's like, tell me more about Greg.
So, Mark, I believe you had a couple other questions there, unless I was busy doing something and missed them.
No, I do. And I wanted to have a little fun. I love talking about this film. I echo everything. I cried like a baby the first time I watched it. Honest, that is the truth. And I've seen it now, I think 5 times. Uh-oh, what are we sharing?
No, I'm out of video, so I'm just going to show you some stills while you talk.
While I'm jabbering, I can do that.
No, it's good. I think I'm already out. Nope, there's me. That's
I'm very curious about you. I mean, we all know you guys from the whiskey perspective, from the filmmaking perspective, but I'm curious about you guys outside of that. Do you guys have any hobbies outside of whiskey? Let's start with the Fonz. And if you're keeping score at home, it's time to drink.
and if you were reading the photographs, you saw Adam Hennett. There's another one.
Oh, yeah. Take a double. Fonz, what are you into outside of this?
Well, travel primarily, but I just love going different places, and that's part of the reason that I signed on to this particular film. Greg and I've known Greg for 30 years now, and I've dabbled here and there in different projects that he has created, and we've teamed together up on different things. And this one was going to take me somewhere else, and I was going to learn a lot more about myself. So about me, I'm into motorcycles and travel and all that sort of thing. And that's something that Mark knows a little bit. No one else knows about that, but this is where they all come together. I said, I can go to Scotland. I can't ride and drink, but
you know what's funny? You know what's funny about Alphonse is at the beginning of this movie, he wasn't even a drone pilot. He was just the best photographer I've ever met. And I know he won't say that. He poo-poos it, but he is. He's the best still photographer I've ever met or worked with. And then I told him, I was like, you should become a drone pilot. So he's like, all right. And then like a month later, he's like, okay, now I'm a drone pilot. And
I got a story for you on that one. If you're at the end of that one.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Do you remember the last night of the campaign when we were of the crowdfunding campaign, where we're like, we did it. We forced our way through the gate. And then Richard showed us that video of the drone that had just come out like that day or the day before from DJI. And we all looked at that. We watched that trailer for the product, and we're like, we need that. All 3 of us were like, we need that. And so we had that, whatever it was a week later, and I had my license, days after that. Actually, I got my test for the license the day I was flying to Scotland. So yeah, this film created that monster.
The backstory is Fonz and I have a mutual friend. And hey, Roger, what's up? Both of us have known Roger for a million years. And he says, I've got a friend who's into whiskey and who's also into motorcycles. You guys should meet each other. And then it just sort of snowballed directly after that. And here we are after that. So that's the backstory on that story.
Yeah.
Brad, I'm skipping Greg in the order that is appearing on the screen. Brad, what are you into? What are your hobbies?
I tend to collect things that I'm into, like to a point where people, I don't know, it becomes a why are you collecting so much? I mean, first it was wine, then it became scotch, right? Right now it's like silver coins and things like that. So it's just it's the way my mind works. I mean, I'm a filmmaker. I make films all the time, and like we do a lot of corporate video and things like that. But I'm a collector, I think. And one of the things that excited me, like when I learned about wine, and Greg has heard this story a million times, but I knew that once you understand the environment, the terroir of something, then you kind of understand, where it's coming from. So like when I got into wine, I learned about France and all of the regions there. And then that gave me a primer to go out. And I knew that once I understood Scotland, that everything would come into place, fall into place. So this project was perfect because with Al going out and shooting the environment and capturing it, because that really falls into the whiskey, that story that we're talking about. You have to understand the environment where these people live, and what goes into the whiskey is the environment. So I think that the drone pilot aspect was just so critical part of that story. But I'm diverting here, but basically I collect anything that I love. And yeah, I have a lot of scotch, not as much as I'd like to, but
You have the biggest scotch of anyone.
I live in
I know.
Pennsylvania. So anytime I travel, I grab something and bring it back. And so the crew is always expecting me to go to a liquor store when we land in Dallas or LA or someplace and bring something back, because I live in Pennsylvania and I can't get what I want.
You're gonna get anything in Pennsylvania.
And the angel share of getting something to Pennsylvania is really steep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coin collecting is called numismatics, right?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Typical writer in me. I had to think of the word. What's the coolest? Yeah. Thank you, Greg. What's the coolest coin that you own?
I have some Spanish 8 reals. So like there's the pieces of 8. So I'm just sort of getting into the that type of stuff. So I don't know. I don't have kids, so it's not going anywhere. It's just sort of like this thing that I'm
Is this one
collecting.
worth anything?
Can we have it?
Is that a Morgan?
Mark, before you veer too far away from Fonz, I'm trying to cue up Trevor to tell the best story about Alphonse and the drone.
Well, I was going to go to Trevor next, and I was going to say, Trevor,
Include
aside
blood?
from
Yeah, it
declining
does.
expense reports and aside from herding kittens to make this film, what do you do outside of that?
Well, I'm any day now going to be a father of 3, so
Nice.
that's all
Congratulations.
that I do. What I'm collecting is kids. Thank you so much.
He's collecting
Wait,
children.
not three at once. This is number 3, or are you having?
This is number 3. I got 2
Oh,
already,
okay.
so I got one more coming. But one thing I'll just say just about Brad, and this is something I've in through my whiskey journey in this film, I'm always amazed at collectors, because I try as I might, I cannot keep a bottle on my shelf to make a collection out of it. I buy one, it's just gone. So that's fascinating to me. But instead of I will tell that story about Alphonse, because this relates back to something else we were talking about earlier that I think doesn't get talked about enough. And I think it relates back to the question you were asking about what we learned about the making of the process changed who we are. So these things, everyone in this film is really humble, and they don't need to be, because the dedication and work and just tirelessness of their efforts is staggering. And as the perfect example of funds is the perfect example for that. But the story that Greg is teaming me up for is Greg and Alphonse went out to, and they could tell you the place on Isle. I can't remember the name of
Molivo.
Molo. Oh, it's Bill. Chad, the whiskey you have is named after it. I know. That means the O, and that's the part of Isla where that whiskey's named after that. He's talking. If you've seen the movie, the seagull shot, that's what he's talking about.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So they go out there to film the thing with a drone, and the one commonality, particularly of Isla, is that the wind is ferocious, and so Alphonse the whole time is wrestling with this drone. So he's flying this drone. At some point in this beautiful, incredible, some of the most incredible drone shots I've ever seen in my life, and I've been a part of producing probably 1 million. This is maybe the most beautiful drone shot I've ever seen. that drone shot is taken while Alphonse actually sliced his finger open on the blade of the drone, and instead of administering to his wound the way a normal person would, Alphonse doesn't want to miss the shot, so he just drives his sliced open, bloody, wounded hand into the dirt to staunch the wound, while he flies one-handed through a windstorm over a cliff in which, if the drone fell out of the sky, it'd be gone forever. There'd be no collecting it. It was like a 100-foot drop into the churning ocean. And Alphonse did it. He just was like determined not to lose the shot. So he got the shot. And then they sort of lightheartedly called me and sent a picture of his post-dirt hand wrapped in like a slice of his T-shirt or something. That
a candy bar wrapper.
A candy bar wrapper. The only thing he had to bandage his wound was a candy bar wrapper. And so he sent me a picture. He sent me a picture of his like Snickers wrapped bloody hand as like a joke, just to be like, yeah, shooting's going well.
I have rubbed some dirt on it.
And I've got the insurance company on the line, and I'm like, what is happening? They're like, tell me, is he okay? Should we rush him to the hospital? And they're just joking back and forth. They just got this fantastic shot. They're probably sharing a gram out there.
I sent you a text that said he has 9 more fingers, and you said, stop fucking around. Tell me if he's okay.
I'll put some dirt on it.
I think because weren't you landing in your hand at that time? Like
when he cut himself, he was making a video for my children. I was FaceTiming my kids, and I said, look what Uncle Chavo's doing. And he held up the drone, and the wind was so strong, it spun the props up and cut his hand. But the sun was setting, so he flew the drone anyway while pushing his hand into the grass.
I'd just like to say, as a disclaimer, there's no OSHA on Isla, so we're good.
I still have the video that I was making for my kids.
Yeah, he was actually I thought you were live with them, but yeah, you were like, hey kids, he turns his phone to me to say hello to his children, and I just pick up the drone. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Here you go. And that's a bottle of whiskey, not a drone, but the wind just fucking picked up the blood just goes flying. He turns the camera, he turns his phone away, and he goes, that's not for you kids.
I've never shown that. Yeah, never. But I do have it somewhere. I'd have to go look for it. But I'm going to find it.
We have every sunrise and every sunset. We were there because we would get up in the morning after a long day of shooting, and like I would start to, we would start making breakfast, and I would hear Greg saying, "Wow, the sun is coming up. If only I had a photographer to go out and shoot it." Every day. But every day was a new day. Every day was a new environment.
It's important to note, though, because we shot all those sunrises and sunsets, that every distillery we went to, they gave us bottles and bottles of whiskey, as well as giving us tasting samples while we were there. So the fact that Brad and Fonz were up at dawn every morning shooting was Herculean on its own.
3, 4 in the morning doing DIT.
Gallons of whiskey in them from the night before.
But good whiskey. So
really good whiskey.
Yeah.
Fonz is literally the only man alive who has literally the island of Isla running through his veins via that dirt.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And Snicker.
Hey,
Snicker.
It's called the Mullowell in Gaelic locally, but to us, it's actually the American monument. I bled for the American monument.
There were a lot of Fonz, and there were a lot of drones. So everybody needs to take a drink.
Yeah.
I will say this though, for the next film, one thing that's going to be really helpful is we're going to save a lot of money on first aid kits and just bring a couple of Mars bars.
Just go to Costco before you leave and get the
I don't know why they don't advertise that as a feature of the candy bar.
Don't waste the whiskey, just drink it and wrap it with a candy bar.
Just
all right,
dip it
Greg.
in whiskey, Fonz.
You are up. When you're not making great films, when you're not doing what it is that you do, what do you do?
What do I do on you and I were talking the other day. I told you I absolutely love skiing, but I don't get to do that very often in Los Angeles. I didn't get to do it at all last year. But the year round, what is my hobby? Reading. That's a pretty nerdy answer, right? But
that's
Right,
pedestrian.
every day.
Come on, I hear
He
you're a
writes
beer
every
drinker. I
day,
hear you're a
and-
beer drinker.
Yes, I'm a beer drinker, and Trevor and I used to make our own beer until one of our beers exploded and ruined his suit. It exploded while we were aging it in his closet, and it ruined his suit. And that was the end of Old Baby Brewing Company. But yes, I do love beer, and this is my break from a dry month tonight. I have another week to go, and I haven't had a beer or whiskey until tonight. So
Was dry month on the list? I'm pretty sure I put that on the list. Dry month.
Bonds
one
is
of the
dry
things.
month on the drinking list, because it probably is.
I believe that it is.
It should be.
It is not. No.
Oh, I swear I was going to put it on there. Maybe I
Not on the list.
All right. Well, it's on the list. Fuck it,
I
everybody.
can
drink
read
it.
them all, and it would all be
I'll tell you the other thing that
Okay.
chugging.
this isn't even lame or hobby, but my other hobby is watching old movies, and I do it every night. I always joke that my wife. It's the truth. My wife goes to bed about 2 hours before I do most nights, and so for 2
Isn't
hours,
that the
I'm alone.
greatest?
It's awesome.
I know, right?
Tell my
She-
wife.
My wife doesn't.
Coming to your
disagree.
place, Mark.
My wife is
Come on
totally
over.
down with it. I watch a lot of every night. I have a different thing I'm watching, and tonight I'm probably gonna. I might watch Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid for like the umpteenth time. That's queued up right now. But I just watched a documentary about Alfred Hitchcock, and I'm kind of wanting to watch an old Hitchcock movie. So
I just
I'm not
watched
going to
the,
give away
Chaplin
what your
film.
favorite films are. Please read my interview, and you'll find out what his favorite films are, because it's in there. We actually cover that.
one of them is on a poster right over here, but I can't turn this camera around, so you're just gonna have to guess.
Don't give it away. Come
You
on.
won't change the camera.
I need some
Probably
readers.
has to do with Alphonse and the Birds.
No, no, but I don't think I told Mark this. I will tell you this. Mark, stop me if I told you this. Did I tell you about Martin Landau?
Not in our conversation, but in a previous conversation we did. Yeah.
For 5 years, Martin Landau was my next door neighbor here.
Nice.
And I was so intimidated, I never told him that I was a huge fan of his. And then I saw that he was moving out, and his daughter was helping him move out. And my wife said something to his daughter. She said, my husband loves your dad, and he's never told him. And she's like, oh, he should tell him, because today's his last chance. He's moving. And so I said, okay. And I told him, I said, I'm a huge fan of yours. I actually have a poster of Crimes and Misdemeanors in my bedroom with you on it. And he said, oh, which poster is it? And we had this whole conversation about this, about Crimes and Misdemeanors. And I told him I absolutely love this movie. And it was the day he moved out. And then he died like a year later. And that's my big mark. But that is Crimes and Misdemeanors is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's why I bring it up.
That's
and my
a
wife
very-
has they had a garage sale when he moved out, and my wife has his old Dutch oven.
Nice.
All of that is a totally LA story. That is an LA story if I ever heard one. Sorry.
It is
Sorry,
100%. It really, really is.
Okay. We've gone totally and completely off of the rails, and it has nothing to do with the fact that we're playing the drinking game along with everyone. Greg, you spilled the beans just a little bit on this. But my final question before we toast the film and toast everyone and also get to audience questions is, what's next? Tell me what's happening. What can we look forward to? What can we look forward to from you guys? I have not had that much to drink.
2 pours.
I'm on number 4.
He's a lightweight. I'm
a total
I
lightweight.
have no idea where I'm at.
I don't wait till they're empty to pour more.
That doesn't count then. You're right. I've been doing
Right.
that too.
That's
I'm
one
on-
drink.
I'm on
Wait,
4.
in my defense, I wanted to finish the 1910 first. And what was left in the glass, I primed the glass for the 15.
Surely
the
you got
Glenallachie
more than one
15.
glass.
No.
Chad's been muted. I'm sorry.
No, answer your
Fruit fly.
What's next? We
Yes.
shot a lot of footage about independent bottling that we wound up not using. We used a fair amount of it, but we shot a lot more than we did. We knew that independent bottling was the sort of incubator of the single malt whiskey explosion throughout Scotland. We knew it. Brad and I knew it before. When we did that initial kind of early shoot, we spent a couple days, 3 days at Gordon and MacPhail. And it's funny, one of the stories, you talk about your favorite dram ever. And the first day we were at Gordon and MacPhail, they gave me and Brad this like grocery bag full of miniatures. We get back to our bed and breakfast, and we had rooms adjacent to one another. And we looked through these miniatures, and these are all whiskeys that were distilled in like the 1960s.
Nice.
And we were like, what the hell? And I remember like sitting with my window open in my room, and there was like, I remember there was a seagull that kept landing there. And we were eating peanut M&Ms and drinking whiskeys that were like 55 years old. And so we have all this amazing footage. It's shot by the same people. The audio is recorded by the same people. Everything is the same, but we didn't get to use it because it was just it didn't fit. We put as much in. There's, if the first scene of Act 2, if you've seen the film, if you know what that even means, but it doesn't matter, is about independent bottling, but we have so much more. So we decided we would make a sort of supporting secondary film just about independent bottling. And we have probably about 80% of it shot already. And then Guy, who was our sound mixer on the shoot, has been conducting interviews for me in Scotland during the pandemic. Sometimes with me on an iPad, like as a talking head, like talking to people while he films it. But sometimes just on his own if it works. And as soon as I get back there, we have 4 more days of shooting, and we have a completely secondary film. That's the next thing. That's the low-hanging fruit, and that will absolutely happen.
Without a doubt, and speaking on behalf of WBSE and the Whiskey Network, and Chad and Bill, with apologies for speaking on your behalf, you have a seat at the table here with us. And whenever you are ready to talk about that film and unveil it to the public, please come here first. Please allow us the scoop, and we would love to be your partner in promoting that film and showing that to our members.
We would love it. So, absolutely.
Excellent. Bill and Chad, any final thoughts on the film, on the crew here before we go to any questions that may have come in from the audience? I think as we're doing that, we should all prepare for one final toast, because this has been incredible to be among friends and to talk about your film, to talk about the impact to our community, and to learn a little bit more about you guys just personally. Everybody,
I want to do a bottle kill with you.
Oh my God, you're going to get a bottle kill from Chad.
Hey, Greg has actually had some of that. He knows what that's like.
Oh, that's that one? That's
1792.
Baby.
The 1792 funky bottle pick from WBSE.
Nothing but funk, baby.
You're muted. There you are.
Nothing but funk. No, guys, your film is absolutely awesome. I encourage anybody to watch it, and definitely look forward to partnering up in the future with your future endeavors. You guys really kick ass. This has been a great night.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mark, you really need to kick it up, baby.
What do you want me to kick up? Come on, man.
Some of those pours, you lightweight. Come on, son.
Afterwards, I'm gonna sit in my underwear and smoke a cigar later. So I'm
Fair enough. I'm sitting in my underwear now.
I'm going to think about it while I drink a Lafroig, Mark.
Don't stand up, Chad.
I'm gonna be
Don't-
calling you, Greg. We'll do FaceTime.
So, yeah, I've enjoyed the journey, and we have one more to go with the Glen Alecky event, the end of October. But Greg knows, he's seen me comment on many of his big man weed ram posts on his site. I've followed your endeavors along the way, and I really appreciate what you've done with this film and how you've engaged the community. And yes, I've gone through several drams here. I've gone through a Stones of Siness, 14-year-old Port Charlotte, a Ben Nevis 6-year-old, and now I'm on to the Waterford Dunmore. So I got a little bit of buzz, but we've got a couple of comments I want to share with you if I can get to them on my phone. One of them, here we go. There we go. I'm sure you know Keith Duncan. He's commented many times before. He says it's 2 a.m. in Scotland. I'm on the wrong side of way too many drams. Must be time for a double. Time to mention Rachel.
The double drink.
Oh,
So I guess
we
we'll let
go.
you mention Rachel since he brought it up.
Is that 4?
Mark, so Bill, if you're not aware, Mark said if anyone mentions, listen to me, mentions Rachel Berry,
We're
that's
already
2
on
drinks.
that, G.
Okay, I can do that.
I'll just go big.
Okay.
What are you drinking there?
God, wow.
Some 15-year-old Sam Houston shit. I don't know.
Oh,
It's a new bottle. I'm trying to figure it out, and the best way to figure out a bottle is to
figure it
chug them
out.
off.
Is it
Son of
fit
a bitch.
out to go?
I'm still doing this.
If you follow the Water of Life group on Facebook, they posted about it earlier today, and I made a comment that said something to the effect of, we're going to play the drinking game. And I listed a bunch of terms. And Keith, actually, thank you, Keith, you brought up, I failed to mention Rachel Berry. So I added, see, Fonz's got it going on right there. I added Rachel Berry at the end, and if she came up, she was a bonus round, and it was a double drink. So we all took a double drink for that. And if we keep doing this, I'm going to fall over in my chair. So
Stop it.
Or finish your dram.
All right. Our next comment is from one of our writers. He's our cocktail specialist, Jim Zadrozny. He says, speaking of Lafroig, I remember reading Jim McEwen's advice to Cone Campbell, which went something like, you represent Lafroig, and that's the most important thing, but you also represent Isla, which is also important. But most importantly, you represent Scotch, and everything else is unimportant.
I've heard Jim say that a number of times to various people in various ways. And I think he, just yesterday, the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society did a 7-hour long live broadcast on YouTube.
Shit.
And they had all these different people. At the end, they had all these bourbon guys that were kind of blind tasting whiskeys and comparing them. It was pretty cool. But they got, it was a free event, but they squeezed $160 out of me because I bought the Lafroig bottling that they released during it. But anyway, they were talking a lot about the role of Scotland and sort of the representation of Scotland. And Charlie McLean was on as their first guest, and Brad, you remember Charlie said this to you and I. He said, when I would go abroad, I was representing Bowmore, or Bruichladdich later. I was representing Islay, I was representing whiskey, and I was representing Scotland. And Jim's daughter told me that the standard walking orders at Bruichladdich during their festival days is you do not drink during festival day because you work here. Because you represent this distillery, you represent this island, you represent this country. But at the end of the day, then we will have the best party you will never remember for the rest of your life.
2 days after the festival, no one remembers a thing.
It's funny, Bruichladdich is the only distillery that closes for the day after their open day. Like they're completely closed. They understand the wreckage in the wake.
By the way, if any of your viewers have not, if they're getting into Scotch or something like that, they really want to take a deep dive, look into the Fashiel, because it's the whiskey festival, especially on Islay. It's just an esoteric experience that you will never forget. So it's worth the journey. I hate to say that because I don't want more people there. I know that the last 2 years have been they had to shut it down, but I think it was the last 2 years, this year inclusive. So the next year is going to be
bananas.
And party is not even the word. It's a celebration of getting together, seeing people, raising a dram, and just being, together.
2 years ago,
I have kicked around the idea of we had attempted a trip to Scotland with the pandemic, sort of put the nail in the coffin with that. But we've kicked around the idea of maybe doing it again and trying to arrange it with you folks and all of us going over together, and that would be phenomenal if we could ever make that happen. But
That's something we could talk about
yeah,
without putting too much out
Check on
there.
that. No, that's awesome.
it's
Stay tuned for the WBSE tour.
Trevor, we'll put them up in the murder house.
Yeah.
Just
the world
remember,
has to get itself right.
I
before
will
we
be
can do
getting
that.
arrested over in Loch Ness because I'm diving in the goddamn thing, looking for Nessie. Where
No,
my
but Brad
Viking
gets
helmet?
yours.
Oh,
Brad,
naturel.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
happening.
want to be on the same plane as Chad because they're going to run out of booze on that plane.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm private charter, baby.
you're
Yeah.
gonna end up on your own ferry.
Yes, the WBSE G6. I forgot.
Yes,
Oh, was I-
yes.
sorry, I shouldn't
Oh,
have said
oh,
that.
oh, oh. So,
Like I said, the world's got to get itself right before we can even think about planning something like that. But wouldn't that be a cool thing to do?
yes.
So, gentlemen, I believe we're already half an hour over time. So I'm going to
Yes.
pass it over to Chad to
So
wrap this
I am
up.
going to raise my glass to everybody and say, on behalf of myself, Bill, and Mark, I'd like to thank you guys, Greg, Alphonse, Brad, Trevor, the people behind the scenes of the incredible movie, The Water of Life. Thank you for sharing this evening with us. We really, really appreciate it. The insight behind the scenes, which we don't get to hear very often, unless you scroll past the credits and you watch those behind the scene things on the DVD. So we got to talk to you guys live about this stuff. It's been amazing. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. The Water of Life. It's a kick-ass film. So cheers to you. Cheers to WBSE and the Whiskey Network. Cheers to the Water of Life. Remember, crack a bottle and share a pour, guys.
Markley.
Good. Yeah.